Hello and welcome to The Take. I'm your host, Chesley McNeil. You know, each weekday we look at the stories making headlines, but then we bring in the experts from our community to give their take. Here's a look back at some of the top takes from this week and how those in the know are seeing the stories that impact you. Mayor Dickens. 3 years ago, he survived the runoff race and became the current mayor of Atlanta. Now he's eyeing another term, while issues surrounding his office have been swirling in recent weeks. Let's welcome the mayor to the show. Good morning, Mayor Dickens. How you doing? All right, we're having a little problem hearing you right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking to our viewers. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, let's get right into it, right? The work of the now former Inspector General who was looking into your office's actions. She resigned in protest. Here's what she had to say when she stepped down last month.
Our job is to identify fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption to serve this city. And that's exactly what we have done. We reported it to you, the public, because transparency and accountability matter.
All right, now this week you're saying that may not be true. Can you elaborate on that for us, please?
Yeah, Chelsea. So what you just played is a clip that you said was a month ago. And so at that time, the former Inspector General was employed by the city of Atlanta. And at the same time, we were sadly finding out that she had broken the law 50 different times. That was a shocker. So after she admitted to breaking the law 50 times, she quit. And so you're giving her a lot of airtime for someone to have broken the law and then quit. And she did not take the heedings of the ethics officer. She did not take all of the recommendations by the task force filled with judges and other lawyers. She did not take the advice of a city council that voted unanimously for rules to be changed to make sure that her office was indeed providing proper oversight. So the individual that was supposed to be looking for waste, fraud, and abuse actually abused her power and then quit. And so my office, as you know, Chelsea, since I ran for city council on a platform of ethics, always has been about integrity and ethics. And that is one of my 4 pillars as mayor, and we stand on that today. And so if the Inspector General, who had been in office for almost 5 years, when she was in office, before she quit, she hadn't found any wrongdoings in my office. And so if she had something, I assume she would have reported it to the proper authorities. But since she didn't have anything, she quit after breaking the law 50 times. So we still stand by our integrity and uphold the highest standards.
Gotcha. All right. So added this week, 5 members of the Office of the Inspector General was requesting whistleblower protections against any retaliation from city officials. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so a few of those individuals wanted to make sure that that there was no retaliation against them. Again, I don't have the ability to fire an Inspector General. They have a board for that. I don't hire an Inspector General or fire an Inspector General because they're supposed to have a board for that. And those members that worked for her probably are also concerned if they were taking their advice from Shannon Manigault, who now has quit after breaking the law. And so they sent something up to get whistleblower protection. That is fine. I don't live out of retaliation. And so hopefully with the new Inspector General, we put in an interim in place because we believe that you should have an Inspector General. You think about it, there's 537 cities in the state of Georgia. Atlanta's the only one with an Inspector General, and I want to make sure that we always have an Inspector General, but that individual has to do the right thing and know the law and don't break the law or violate the rights of these employees, labor employees, these hardworking watershed management employees, firefighters. They're all afraid because the Inspector General was breaking the law and actually violating their rights. And so now the city of Atlanta is receiving lawsuits from individuals because of the treatment that the former Inspector General gave. And so I don't know if these folks are going to be eligible for whistleblower protections because that's a federal thing, and so they'll be able to find out from them if they do.
Gotcha. All right. Last week you served up your take on the state of the city. In one word, if you can, what would you say? The state of the city is?
Strong. The state of the city of Atlanta is very strong.
All right, I imagine you got a lot to do, a big to-do list maybe for the rest of the year, 2025. What do you got to do left?
Yeah, so when I came into office, we were in the pandemic. Offices were closed, crime was high. If this was 2020 or 2021, you would be asking me about what are you going to do to bring down the crime? That's what people were asking me. What are you going to do, Mayor, with all these, people can't afford to live in Atlanta. And so since 2021, after my election, I started in 2022, and violent crime is down in Atlanta. You think about it, Chelsea, we have not had but one homicide since February 9th, and today is March 7th. We are living in different times. We had a 26% drop in homicides. We had the third highest drop in the nation because we use a balanced approach to safety and justice. We are working with our teachers and our school kids. We're working with parents and after-school programs. We're working with domestic violence advocates, people to fight back against domestic violence and give people the tools they need to help de-escalate situations in the home. We want to continue to do that into the future, into the next term. We've built or preserved almost 11,000 units of affordable housing towards my 20,000 unit goal. So we have literally, over the past 3 years and 2 months, have done everything we said we were going to do and did it with integrity. And so we want to do more of that. When we declared it the Year of the Youth, APS has had the highest graduation rate that they've ever had, ever. So this is how working together, drawing circles, working with the Atlanta public school system, working with after-school programs, working with nonprofit developers to build affordable housing, working with for-profit developers to make sure that we have affordable units in their homes, and then working with everybody to bring down violent crime. All of that stuff is a good recipe for a re-election, to do it over again. We have a AAA bond rating, the highest bond rating you will ever have for a city and the highest Atlanta has ever had. We got that in my administration through the good financial stewardship. So we're going to stand strong going into re-election. No one has said they're running against me, so we're going to keep it going.
All right, sounds good. Mayor Andre Dickens, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you for being with us, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you soon. You're welcome to the show anytime.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, take care now.
We're marching today to dramatize to the nation, dramatize to the world, that hundreds and thousands of Negro citizens of Alabama, but particularly here in the Black Belt area, denied the right to vote.
That was John Lewis speaking out ahead of the March on Civil Rights that was mirrored in sorrow. This was on March 7th, back in 1965, that Lewis was a part of a group marching from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, asking for the right to vote. More than 50 marchers, including Lewis, was hospitalized that day. This week marks the 60th year of Bloody Sunday, and its impact is still being felt today. Joining us now with more perspective is Michael Collins. He's the chair of the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation, and one who served as chief of staff and floor assistant to Congressman Lewis for almost 20 years. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Chesley.
All right, looking good too, man. Let's talk about this real quick. Give me your take on John Lewis and those events. How much of an effect did that event have on his life of dedicated to service and the movement?
Oh, it was everything, Chesley. I mean, his life was committed to that area, the Black Belt, the right to vote. He wanted to demonstrate the importance of the right to vote, and he wanted everybody to show up and be represented, and that was what he did and fought for his whole entire life. And Selma was just one of the stories of that. It was really the impetus for the voting rights movement. And Bloody Sunday was that most impactful time where you mentioned Congressman Lewis led a group of marchers across the Edmund Pettus Bridge with Hosea Williams to demonstrate the right to vote. And Dr. King later joined him and continued that march later on in the month of March. And so that history was so impactful for our lives and for American history. And so that's why this is so important.
Mike, you spent a lot of time with him. How much did he reflect on that day?
Every day. Congressman Lewis spent his whole entire life telling the story and retelling the story. He traced back the steps of the voting rights movement. He took colleagues from Washington, D.C. and presidents back to Selma to remember what actually happened. Congressman Lewis from the time he was beaten, returned every year, except for 1 year when he missed going back to honor that moment because he had to attend Mother Teresa's funeral with Senator Clinton. And so it was just so important for him to continue to tell the story. He wanted people young and people not so young to remember, never to forget.
Yeah, he and so many others have suffered, for civil rights. How much would you say has civil rights moved forward or shifted backwards since that day?
We moved forward. We have a great distance to go, so much work to do, so much ahead. But Congressman Lewis would want us to remember what we fought for, what we've done, the accomplishments we made. But again, knowing that there's so much more work to do, so much more work ahead.
Yeah. Talk to me about the foundation, what you guys have planned this week to honor that march.
Yeah, Chesley, we are proud to work in partnership with the City of Selma and Historic Tabernacle Baptist Church Foundation and National Park Service, where we're replacing a marker on the bridge, again, to remember the story of Selma, to tell and dramatize exactly what happened so that people who visit Edmund Pettus Bridge and visit Selma this weekend and many days and years to come will know the story of what it took for voting rights so that they don't take it in vain.
You mentioned that putting a marker out there. Is that going to be this week, you said? When are you guys going to actually do it?
Yes, so we're laying the marker this week. Mm-hmm. The actual marker will be laid on Wednesday the 5th. And so we will place it at the foot of the bridge. And again, in culmination with the anniversary and celebration this coming weekend of the 60th anniversary.
Sounds good. Michael Collins, the chair of the John and Lillian Miles Lewis Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Really appreciate you. Too many of us have been falling victim to scams. Yep, some new numbers out today from Bankrate that shows a third of Americans have been hit with some sort of financial fraud or a scam in the past year. And more than a third of those people have lost money because of it. Baby boomers and Gen Xers are most likely to have ever experienced a financial scam or fraud, but Gen Zers and millennials are more likely to lose money. One source of financial scams here in Georgia is simply a text to your phone saying you're late on catching up on unpaid tolls. Here to help us to avoid being nailed is John Clay, Vice President of Threat Intelligence, with more on these growing toll scams in Georgia. John, right off the bat, give us your take on what these scams are all about, especially with the tolls.
Yeah, the scammers this year really have taken to the toll scam a lot. We saw at Trend Micro, we saw a 900% increase in toll scams this year alone. And so what they're trying to do is prey upon these people that use toll roads, and they'll send a text message, an iMessage. They even might send an email message saying you have unpaid fines or unpaid tolls, and if you don't pay that, you'll get a hefty fine. They want you to click on a link. The link will take you typically to a malicious website where they will gather information about you. They may gather your credit card information, all that kind of stuff, and then it will basically scam you out of your money, out of your information, and so forth.
Why tolls? Why are they going after the tolls? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean, they take advantage of any different types of topics. When the Olympics are around, it was Olympics. When the Super Bowl was around, it was Super Bowl. When there's no big event going on, they will take advantage of other things that people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And they're looking for people to be distracted. They try to get you concerned, and there's urgent messaging in the message itself, trying to get you off key so that you'll pay the toll.
John, in our state, or at least here in the metro area, Atlanta metro area, it's really the express lanes that we see. We don't see a whole lot of tolls. You may dip into that lane, and I know if you go through other states, they'll have a sign that says if you don't have a pass, we'll just mail it to you, that kind of thing. So if you happen to dip into that, I mean, how do you know whether or not it's legit or not?
Yeah, that's the hardest thing today because technology's gotten to the point where the scammers can craft, the website they send you to will be exactly looking like the legitimate website you would normally go and pay tolls at or buy merchandise or whatever it might be, right? The messages, they use generative AI to craft the messages now, so they don't have bad grammar, don't have misspellings, et cetera. So it is difficult to identify. But the big thing you want to look at doing is, if you do use tolls, bookmark the toll website. So peachpass.com, you would want to bookmark that and only go to that. Don't go to it via a text message or an email message that you receive.
Is it too late for somebody who feels like they've already been targeted? Like, is it, I mean, if you've already paid it, I guess you can't get your money back.
No, I don't think so. I think, first and foremost, call your financial institution and maybe stop your credit cards going at that point. And consumers do have some protection when they get scammed. So if it's via a credit card, you contact your credit card agency and let them know that you got scammed, and so they can sometimes get that money back. I would also recommend contacting law enforcement because we need to arrest these people and get them off the streets. And so that can happen as well.
John, we'll certainly have you back on the show. Are there any other scams quickly that we need to be concerned about that you know of?
Well, certainly tax scams will be coming up very quickly. They'll start sending these messages that say, hey, you need to pay your taxes, or here's some information about your taxes. Click on this link. So that's going to be a big one. And then, obviously, NBA finals or any of the sports activities, they prey upon any kind of, incident that's going on as well.
Okay. All right. John Clay, appreciate you being on, man. And we're going to have you back because we really need to know about these scams.
Yeah, my pleasure. Have a safe day.
All right. Do the same, my friend. Thanks a lot. Now to a story that has many of our viewers talking about it. It's a cancer mystery up in the North Georgia mountains. Here to talk more about it is 11Alive investigative reporter Savannah Levin. She joins us with her take on what's going on up there. Savannah, first of all, can you recap this story for us?
Yeah, Chesley, I think that's a good place to start. So we found thyroid cancer rates in several Northeast Georgia counties are higher than anywhere else in the state. And it's not just an outlier here in Georgia. The thyroid cancer rates there are about double the national average or more. And it's happening in these 6 neighboring counties you're seeing on your screen: Union, Lumpkin, Hall, White, Habersham, and Raven. Thyroid cancer rates there have been unusually high over the last 10 years or so, Chesley, so really concerning.
Wow, you broke this story back in November. What has the response been since then?
I mean, it's huge. I was just told a few minutes ago that it's one of the top stories on our website right now. It's really striking a chord. We reported this data, so of course, Chesley, we knew theoretically thyroid cancer rates were high there, but the number of thyroid cancer patients from that area who have reached out to us after that initial story aired, it's really put this issue into clear focus for us. So as of this moment, I just checked, more than 70 people from those 6 counties who have thyroid cancer have reached out to us, agreeing to share information about their diagnosis, where they live, places they frequented. That's what you're seeing on that map right there. Now, I've talked to each of them, and while you are seeing points on a map there, let's remember every single one of those dots reflects a real person's story. So let that sink in. Here are just a couple that we talked to recently.
So I kind of took a second to process it, but I told my close friends there what was going on.
They just said, well, it has to be environmental. I started thinking, what have I eaten? What am I breathing? What have I done to myself? Through people like you, maybe somebody can find a reason that we're getting it.
All right, so Savannah, the big question is something in the environment up there, something in the water? I mean, what's going on up there to cause this?
Yeah, that's a good question, and we're pushing state leaders for answers on that. Now, we know the Department of Public Health and the Department of Natural Resources did consult on the data that we found, but they decided not to launch a study, Chesley.
Why did they decide not to launch the study?
Yeah, good question as well. Well, they said ionizing radiation is the only known environmental source of thyroid cancer, and they say since there's no known source of that in this area, they came to the conclusion that a study isn't needed.
Okay. All right. So what are the leaders doing now to take some action?
Yeah, so there are some state leaders taking action to that point. I reached out to every single state senator and representative of these 6 impacted counties to make them aware of this data and ask what, if anything, they plan to do. And just like, as you and I know, things don't always move quickly at the state capitol. But in this case, I got very prompt responses from nearly all of them. Senators Hatchett and Senator Gooch, Representative Hopkins, Dubnik, Donahue, and Wade, all expressing real concern over this data, all agreeing to speak with us about it.
It's something that's needs to be looked at and now and soon. We don't want to turn a blind eye to it or pretend like it's not happening. We can't do that. I want to know the cause.
I think we all want to know the cause. What's the plan going forward now?
So without the help of DPH and DNR, like I said, the push for research is going to look different, but there are plans in motion, so that's the good news. We are going to break that all down for you tonight in an all-new report that you can watch on 11Alive News at 6 and right here in the 11Alive Plus app. So please make sure you tune in for that. We've got a lot more good information for you.
And once again, Savannah, how big is this area that we're experiencing this in?
6 counties, and they're all neighboring counties, Chesley, which is obviously strange when you're seeing like these 6 counties all have the highest rates in the state and some of the highest rates in the country, and they're all neighboring. You know, the obvious question is, what's going on up there?
Yeah. Well, you know you're on it, and we know you get down to the bottom of it. Please do help those folks up there.
Yeah, we'll definitely try. Thank you, Chesley.
Thanks a lot, Savannah. Really appreciate that report. All right. If you have a tip for our 11Alive News investigative reporters, reach out. You can call Savannah and the rest of our investigative team at 404-873-9111. Again, that's 404-873-9111. Or email us at investigates@11alive.com. Man, let's get down to the bottom of it. Let's turn now to Rachel Goche, a meteorologist with Inshore Institute for Business and Home Safety. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me this morning.
All right, give us your take on these storms and what we could see.
Yeah, you know, meteorological spring just began the other day, March 1st. So this is one of our first spring systems rolling across the country. We're sure to see many more as we head into that spring severe weather season, March, April, May. So really now is the begin to start making those preparations, not just for this system, but for any future systems we see. You want to make sure you get your home in order before these storms really begin to roll in. And we have a variety of ways you can do that. The roof, of course, we say is your home's first line of defense. So get up there, clean out those gutters and downspouts. That's one of the simplest but most effective things you can do to protect your home. And that's important because you want to keep any water from backing up into your roof. So you want that to be able to flow away from your home. And another really simple thing you can do, get out there, trim those tree branches back, any dying or diseased trees, especially ones that overhang your roof. Trim those back, make sure they are out of the picture for this upcoming severe weather season.
You mentioned, we're just at the beginning of this, right? And we'll have storms rolling through. Once you prepare one time, do you need to keep preparing for almost each storm that comes in?
Well, most of these things are things you can do to prepare your home really for the whole severe weather season. Of course, you want to kind of stay up to date with things as the severe weather season progresses, but kind of getting your roof in order is one of those things. Another thing you can do that's going to be a one and done situation is getting one of those protective screens that can protect your HVAC system. You know, when we see high winds and hail, that can really do a number on your HVAC system. So get one of those protective screens that can really protect against hail. That's another big thing. Another thing you can do, again, another one and done thing, seal gaps and cracks around your home. So that's going to be particularly around windows and doors. That's going to prevent that wind-driven rain that is produced by thunderstorms from getting into the interior home, causing water damage. So those are some things that you can do once, and you most likely will not have to do them again when the next storm is beginning to approach.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that. I had a gutter that was dislodged from the pipe that sends it out back, and that water got right down into my foundation, went into my basement. So a good tip right there. What else is one thing that did you mention the thing that homeowners forget to keep an eye on?
Things that homeowners forget to keep an eye on. That is a good one. You know, I think just people don't realize how important the roof is. Again, we say it's the first line of defense. The reason why this is so important is because our research that we do here at IBHS shows that your shingles can blow off in winds as low as 50 to 60 miles per hour. That's not even often severe thunderstorm strength. So it doesn't take much to blow your shingles off the roof. Mm-hmm. And once that happens, those gaps or cracks in your roof deck or that plywood that's actually attached to your roof, those gaps and cracks are supposed to be there to allow your roof to contract and expand. But if your roof cover is missing and you have heavy rain, we know that our research here shows that for every 1 inch of rain that falls, up to 9 bathtubs full of water can get inside your roof. So that's really bad. Of course, that leads to a cascade of damage. You get that water damage in the interior home, things like mold. Our evidence shows that this increases the cost of an insurance claim by almost 3 times as much. So I would say really what people do the most is really really underestimate how important the roof is. So that's why we ask people to take that preventative maintenance and just get your roof in order. Another thing you can do is have a roofer come out and inspect the condition of your roof. You want to make sure that you don't have any missing or torn or broken shingles, again, because you want to prevent at all costs that water from being able to get inside your home.
All right. Thanks a lot, meteorologist Rachel Gauthier. Really appreciate that insight. You know, new tariffs is put in place this week, and we are expecting those gas prices at the pump to go up and up and up. Right now, if you fill up your tank, the cost of unleaded gas, according to AAA, will cost you about $2.93. It's only about 2 cents more cheaper than it was a month ago, but those figures are expected to rise, of course. Here to examine the projected pain at the pumps for us is Patrick DeHaan. He's the head of petroleum and analysis at Gas Buddy. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
All right, give us your take on how painful it can get at the pumps.
Well, I think to what you were saying, we have the seasonal trends that normally lead to gas prices going up this time of year. Although we haven't seen much of an increase yet, I think the tariffs are going to be kind of a secondary impact. And the good news for those in Atlanta is that tariffs probably really won't make any deal when it comes to gasoline prices. The seasonal dynamics will push prices up anywhere from 20 to 40 cents over the next 4 to 8 weeks. Those seasonal dynamics include refinery maintenance that's now happening before the summer driving season, rising demand as spring break travelers hit the road and temperatures start to gradually warm up, and the transition from winter gasoline, which is cheaper, to summer gasoline, which is more expensive. The tariffs probably will only have maybe just a couple of cents of impact in Atlanta. Now, it does vary based on where you are. The good news is that both the tariffs are likely to be a very low-level impact, but the seasonal factors are something we have to watch. All in all, the tariffs probably be far more impactful in areas like the northeastern U.S., where they do receive a lot of gasoline supply from refineries in Canada. That's where those tariffs are going to hit a little bit harder.
So you're saying here in Georgia, the tariffs won't play that much of a role? It's the switchover?
Yeah, that's really correct. Tariffs are really going to have almost negligible role in gas prices in Atlanta, and that's because a lot of the oil that you eventually put in your car in the form of gasoline is coming out of refineries in the U.S. A lot of that is U.S.-produced crude oil, and it's not subject to tariffs. So tariffs are going to be very much an unevent, or non-event, I should say, for Atlanta, but not everyone's going to fare the same. Those in the Northeast will likely see a 20, maybe 25 cent a gallon impact. Those in the U.S. Midwest, the Great Lakes, and the Rockies, they also receive a lot of Canadian crude oil. So that's where that 10% tariff is going to take a bite, but not so much in Georgia at all.
Do you think this will fuel more talk about domestic drilling of oil, especially off the Gulf shores? Do you think that's going to lead to that?
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about that already. The one thing that a lot of Americans don't know is that while the U.S. is the world's largest oil producer, there's been 50 to 60 years of precedent. A lot of refineries in those inland areas I described that receive Canadian crude oil can't just yank the hose out and switch over to U.S. produced crude oil. Number one, there's not a whole lot of pipelines that deliver crude oil south to north. So that's one challenge. The second challenge, a lot of those refineries aren't set up to handle a U.S. type of crude oil. It's kind of like putting gasoline in a diesel-powered vehicle. It's something that would require a lot of change at refineries, and that would require billions of dollars in investment. So it's not such an easy solve.
All right, help us out here. What do we do as these prices go up? I mean, what's going to happen, man?
Yeah, you know, there's not a whole lot you can do. It's kind of like egg prices, right? You can stock up, but where are you going to put it all? Right. So the other issue is it's a commodity price. It's going to fluctuate. What goes up eventually will come back down. And here's the good takeaway, is I'm hopeful that gas prices this summer, well, maybe the low $3 a gallon region when prices peak. That's lower than last year. So all in all, watch out for tariffs. If they continue for a longer period of time, they could slow down the economy. But overall, gas prices this summer likely to be at their lowest level really since prior to the pandemic, and that's the good takeaway.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you that very thing. Is it going to change behaviors? Do you think it'll have impact on behaviors? And obviously you said it would. People maybe not going on those longer vacations or driving. Certainly it's going to have an impact on other travel as well, like traveling by plane or train or whatever. What's your take on that?
Yeah, you know, exactly right. There's going to be, keep in mind, if the economy does slow down, there's going to be a lot of consumer change in behavior. A lot more folks are getting pushed back into offices, although not all of them. So we will see a return somewhat of the U.S. Commute. But all in all, that's going to take a lot of time. If the economy does slow down, there's a lot less discretionary spending that's going to be happening. tariffs have really taken a bite out of some of the airline stocks because of worries that an economic slowdown will probably hit some of that discretionary travel more than other areas of the economy.
All right, Patrick DeHaan with Gas Buddy, our buddy. You know we're going to have you back, especially as we change over to that summer blend and the prices go up.
Looking forward to it.
Go back on. All right, thanks a lot, Patrick. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Georgia Congresswoman Lucy McBath may be looking for a new title in a little less than 2 years. Yesterday, the four-term representative and prominent gun control advocate filed paperwork allowing her to now raise money for a run for governor. Here to talk more about that move is the chair of the Republican Party, Josh McCoon. Welcome to the show, Mr. Chair.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, first let's get your take on this potential move, this entry for the race. What do you think?
Well, I think we were all anticipating that Congresswoman McBath would get in the race for governor. I believe the Democrats are going to have a pretty crowded primary field since it appears that Stacey Abrams is going to take a pass and not run for a third consecutive time. But Congresswoman McBath is going to have the same problem most of the leading Democratic candidates will have, which is a public, very far left voting record, which we will be able to expose. Most Georgians are center-right folks. They're common sense people. They like the direction of Georgia government. If you look at the approval ratings of Brian Kemp, right track, wrong track polling, the state's on the right track, and she's going to have, I think, a difficult mountain to climb to make that case if she becomes a Democrat's nominee.
Gotcha. You said it was going to be a crowded race amongst the Democrats. Do you think she's the best Democrat to run?
I mean, from a Republican perspective, I would not be too upset if she was the nominee for the general election because, again, there's a very far left voting record there. The kind of Democrat that I think makes it a more competitive election is someone that's more in the middle, and those Democrats are in short supply in Georgia, at least people that are currently in elected office. So, we'll see who all gets in, but I expect it'll be several. From my perspective, again, we're not concerned. We'll run a very competitive general election campaign if it is Congresswoman McBath.
You mentioned some of the weaknesses. What about some of her strengths? Do you think she has some strengths that maybe will challenge you?
So, of course, her district has been changed a couple of times due to redistricting. Mm-hmm. So she's represented a significant number of Georgians. So that gives her a leg up on the average member of Congress. There are more Georgians that know her than would know an average member of Congress. And of course, she's had an 8-year tenure. She's well known, particularly on the gun control issue, has something of a national profile, would probably be able to raise money outside of the state. So again, not saying she's not a formidable politician, but once again, I think that we'll be able to highlight her voting record in Congress that's just out of step with most Georgians. Gotcha.
Let's look at your party for a minute here. You got one candidate running, Attorney General Chris Carr. How do you think he stacks up against McBath?
Well, look, Attorney General Carr has a distinguished record of service over the last 10 years. Again, someone who I think can carry that banner for Georgia Republicans and will be a formidable candidate if he's our nominee. I do think, like the Democrats, we will have several people that enter into the race. It's still pretty early, so I don't know who our nominee will be, but I think we're going to have several great Georgia Republicans for our primary voters to choose from.
Who else do you see getting into the race on the Republican side?
I think when the legislative session adjourns, I would be surprised if Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones did not run. Obviously, Lieutenant Governor Jones is very close with President Trump. President Trump endorsed him for Lieutenant Governor 4 years ago. And he's a statewide elected official as well, so has a network around the state. So I think he's definitely a candidate. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger has been mentioned as a possible candidate. And then, of course, you may have some surprises out there. We had David Perdue about a decade ago come out of nowhere to become a U.S. Senator, had not previously been in elected office. So you can't discount that we won't have an entrepreneur or businessman or businesswoman who chooses to get into the race as well.
How do you think the race here for governor will stack up like nationwide? Do you think a lot of eyes will be on our race?
Absolutely. Georgia will once again, really for the fourth consecutive election cycle, be at the center of the national conversation, not only because we'll have an open governor's race in a state that is a swing state and a competitive state, but we have for us as Georgia Republicans the best opportunity to pick up a United States Senate seat by firing John Ossoff. So You will see a lot of money coming into Georgia. There will be a lot of eyes on Georgia. Once again, we will be at the center of the national political conversation.
Okay. All right. Georgia Republican Party Chair Josh McCoon, thanks for joining us this morning. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great day. Severe anxiety, rage, insomnia. Kids in Georgia are suffering from a rare neurological disorder, but for years, nobody believed them. That's about to change now as groundbreaking legislation is finally recognizing what families have known for years. Caitlin Ross joins us now. Take a look behind the scenes at a fight to get PANS and PANDAS recognized here in the state. And Caitlin, let's start off right at the bat. What is PANS and PANDAS?
It's a rare neurological disorder that stands for pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorders associated with streptococcal infections. It's as hard as it is to say as it is to treat. But basically, it's an infection like strep throat that tricks a child's immune system into attacking the brain.
All right, so what does this look like for the kids?
So that's a great question because it can look different for every child, but it could mean rage, OCD, insomnia, food restrictions, a lot of anxiety. I talked to one mother, Heather Ward, about what it was like for her family before her son was diagnosed.
Antipsychotics, he was on ADHD meds, he was suicidal at 8, like it was just, we just couldn't figure it out. And the doctor who figured it out was the doctor who had been handling his ADHD meds for a couple of years. And he said, hey, I want you to go to this website. And we looked at the symptoms and I was like, he has every single symptom.
Wow, that sounds pretty scary, Caitlin. What can parents do about this?
So there are some treatments available. The first is antibiotics. That helps kick the infection out. The second is much more serious. It's called IVIG, and it's basically using other people's antibodies through an IV to try and restart the immune system of a child that's affected. But it's $13,000 per treatment. A lot of times insurance doesn't cover it, and most families just cannot afford it.
I got super mad and I was like, I'm ready to fight. I'm gonna fight because my kid deserves this treatment. We deserve to get a chance at being a normal family and her having a normal childhood. And so, it really, but it's exhausting. It is absolutely exhausting. When you are fighting a multi-billion-dollar system, you feel very small.
So are there any solutions here at all, Caitlin?
Yes, Chesley. A new bill was just introduced that passed the State House unanimously. It would provide some insurance coverage for treatments, but then it would also recognize PANS and PANDAS as conditions, really giving parents some teeth for what they've been saying for years, that my kid is sick and my kid needs help. The bill does have some limitations. It covers some treatments, but it doesn't cover that IVIG we were talking about, that super expensive treatment. But parents say, listen, at least this is a start. It will give families somewhere to go. But time is of the essence. The Senate hasn't heard the bill, and crossover day is today. So families are going to be at the state capitol rallying, really trying to get support for that bill and hoping that Governor Kemp sends it into law. The second is that Children's Healthcare of Atlanta just opened a clinic this year. They are taking time with the launch. This is a complicated diagnosis and a complicated treatment, so they can't do it really fast. But 5 patients who have PANS or PANDAS have been scheduled at the clinic, and they've already seen 3 children. Families are really hopeful that that's going to give them a way to heal. But as many as 1 in 200 kids could have this condition. So for these families, ramping up that treatment is vital.
Where can parents go to get the support?
There is a network right here in Georgia. It's called the Southeast PANS Network, and that's so helpful for families who are looking for their next steps. It's an advocacy group that's been working for 8 years to try and get recognition of this condition. So hearing this bill today at the Capitol is a huge step. There's also a national network of families that rally together to help people figure out where to go next. Because if your doctor says we can't figure out what's wrong with your kid, we don't know what to do, this advocacy group can really help provide a roadmap for families who are struggling.
A new Consumer Report investigation is raising some concerns about synthetic hair braiding. Tests show some brands contain chemicals that could be very harmful. Joining us now is James Rogers. He's the Director and Head of Product Safety Testing for Consumer Reports. And James, right off the bat, I understand you led a synthetic hair testing that could be showing some harmful effects. What's your take on this study?
Well, we think it is a study that indicates that actually needs more study. because we did do a small number of samples, but every sample seemed to have a problem with either heavy metals, including lead, or volatile organic compounds, some of these that can cause cancer. So we're hoping that this study starts conversations and leads to more investigation so we can identify the problem and hopefully fix it.
Why did you guys choose this? Of all the things you chose this particular issue, why did you choose it?
Well, this follows almost 90 years from Consumer Reports testing products for safety and contributions to health. And so what we did is we talked to a number of Black women, Black mothers, and asked them, what is the personal care product that you're the most concerned with? And artificial braiding hair came to the top of the list. Additionally, I have 2 daughters that use these products, and so I have a personal concern and interest to make sure that I can advise them what products they may or may not want to consider when they want to use these styles for convenience, for styles, for culture.
You guys tested, I understand, about 10 popular synthetic braiding products. Did you find the same thing in all of those?
Well, we didn't. So we chose the top 10 brands, and we chose the brands that the mothers group that we were working with told us that they use. And so we came up with a list of a total of 10. And we tested those, purchased them and tested those. Every product basically had an issue. So for the heavy metals, 9 out of the 10 products were positive for lead, which was really concerning at the concentrations that we found. And for the volatile organic compounds, every product that we tested had acetone, for instance, which is known to be a respiratory tract irritant. 3 of the products had benzene, which is a chemical that is so intense that it's been associated with cancer, and they actually regulate its use. Every product had a VOC called methylene chloride, again, another chemical that has been associated with cancer. And so of the 10 products, other than the 1 product that was negative for all heavy metals, every product had an issue.
Wow. What was the company's response when you told them about this issue?
So we always release our testing results to the individual companies and ask them for a response. Both of the companies that responded, which was Magic Fingers, I believe, and Sensational, they both basically said their product was safe, and they urged the consumers to continue to use them. But obviously, we don't agree that they are necessarily safe. Now, I do have to say that we detected these chemicals. We have not associated them with disease. So I need to be very, very clear. But we believe the potential is there to provide chronic harm to the consumers that use these products.
Here to join us is Verdelia Turner, the president of the Georgia Federation of Teachers. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. Let's start off with what role does the U.S. Department of Education play?
Well, the Department of Education actually provides access to education and levels the playing field for millions of children who are disadvantaged across the country. That's the primary role. But there are so many other things that DOE does. For instance, children with disabilities, their needs are met. We have occupational therapy, mental therapy, physical therapy, etc. Pell Grant, student loans, career technical education, also civil rights oversight to make sure that there's no discrimination in our schools. So that's the overall arching reason. In 1979, President Jimmy Carter signed a bill that actually created the Department of Education for those reasons. And so the purpose actually is to level the playing field and fill opportunity gaps to prepare our students for career and technical education and for the workforce. Beyond what we do with Title I kids who are living in poverty, and also services to middle class families and students.
Okay, so give us your take on all this maneuvering that you're hearing about.
Well, President Trump is actually giving tax cuts to billionaires, and at the expense of our children and our children's future. Adults, all of the data that we've looked at supports public schools. public schools happens to be the bedrock of our democracy. But billionaires are getting tax cuts on the back of our schools and our children across the country. We're so disappointed that Vice President Vance, who campaigned early in his state of Ohio, that his middle class and working class background had prepared him for public service, and he's turning his back on our children and our schools and services. We have to applaud the late President Lyndon Baines Johnson, who came up with Title I because he saw children in poverty. He taught them in Texas that didn't even have shoes. So this is actually robbing our children, robbing our schools to pay Elon Musk and billionaires. That's what it is in a nutshell.
Well, the new Education Secretary said in her confirmation hearing that only Congress can eliminate federal agencies. How much do you think the president can do on his own?
And she's correct. And it's going to take an act to come. So I think it was last night or yesterday where President Trump started backpedaling some on his decision just for an executive order to write out the Department of Education. But what we would like to do, Chelsea, is make sure that Georgians and all of Americans contact their congressmen so that this president does not intimidate them, can't buy them off, can't cut any deals. Congress must make sure that the Department of Education thrives and survives. This is not up to President Trump.
Talk to me real quick. If this were to take place, what would be some of the immediate effects that we would see on our education department?
Well, let's just talk about in Georgia, Title I, we're going to lose $653 million right off. That affects 1.8 million kids across 2,300 schools here in Georgia, where Georgia has a higher poverty rate. 16% of our children live in poverty, higher than the national average. We're going to lose millions in career technical education funds, millions, especially from minority institutions, over 85 million right there, minority institutions that of higher learning. Children with disabilities, their programs will be cut. English language learners programs will be cut. Counselors that deal with our children's mental state, that's going to be cut. Occupational therapy will be cut. All just flat cut out. Now, when President Trump says that education should return to the state, that doesn't pass the smell test. 90% of education is handled by our state and our local boards of education. So, honestly, Georgia is going to lose right off the bat, just in Title I, $652 million. In Pell Grant, $1.4 billion. $72 billion in federal student loans. 1.7 million Georgians would be affected by that. 85 million cuts from those minority institutions that I was telling you about. 15 million to address the teacher shortage, and we have a severe teacher shortage. Let's go on and on and on. We also feed children when they come to school. Many of our children who are in poverty can't concentrate when they are either living in duress or homeless, and many of our children are homeless. We have right now 57,000 families who are homeless. So Title I and the money that comes from the Department of Education bridges that gap for those who are disadvantaged, and also provides programs for middle class families and loans, Pell Grants, and et cetera, for higher education.
All right, time for my final take. Take a look at this. Yep. It's a flaming hot Cheeto believed to be shaped in the form of Pokemon character Charizard. The Cheeto was nicknamed Cheeto Czar and sold last week at auction for $87,000. $87,000. Bidding started at $250. What are we doing? $87,000? What are you going to do with it? You can't eat it. You're going to display it in your house and say, hey, look at my $87,000 flaming hot Cheeto? Come on, y'all. I tell you what, let's take $20, get 5 bags of Cheetos, throw them out on the table, and let's find a shape and see if we can get $87,000 for it. What are we doing? As we say goodbye today, we're going to close with your moment of Zen. Hopefully it's worth more than $87,000. Enjoy.